Hemant Mehta is an author, blogger, and atheist activist who gained fame for selling his soul on eBay. He is the editor of Friendly Atheists and author to the Young Atheist Survival Guide, I Sold My Soul on eBay, The Friendly Atheists, Thoughts on the Role of Religion in Politics and Media. He also edited and published the book Queer Disbelief. He has worked with the Center for Inquiry, Secular Coalition for America, Secular Student Alliance, and the Foundation Beyond Belief. He has a YouTube channel, The Atheist Voice, and has appeared on CNN and Fox News channels. Here's Hemant Mehta.
Let's see. Can you hear me okay? There we go. All right. So this is like an hour and a half talk. I'm going to boil down to 40 minutes, so I will talk fast and try to get through as much of this as possible. So here's the question I want to try to figure out. Is atheism the last taboo in politics? And I feel like if I'm giving a political speech of any kind, I should give you some important caveats to begin with. Here's the first one. I swear this is not a partisan speech, but it's totally going to sound like it's a partisan speech. And we'll get into the reasons for that in a little bit. The second thing is, it's going to sound like I'm saying we need atheists in politics, and the truth is I don't actually care if we have atheists in politics. Like, there are really good progressive Christians that I'm happy to vote for. You are not going to believe this. I have actually voted for a Christian for president, like, every time. So this isn't saying like, oh no, there are religious people in government, we're screwed. No, that's not the case at all. But, and this is like the freshman from 2018, like, it kind of is important to have some atheists in government because symbolism does matter. It matters that there are people of color in Congress. It matters that there is a trans woman in a state office or a bisexual in the Senate. That stuff makes a difference when it comes to visibility and normalizing these things that so many people want to tear down. So this is kind of where I'm coming from, that it would be a big deal for atheists to see an atheist in government for a lot of these symbolic reasons more than any legislative ones. And let me make that point in a different way, which is to say, August brought this up in his talk right before mine, which is when you think about famous atheists, like, just tell the person next to you, name a famous atheist who comes to mind. No. Name a famous atheist that comes to mind to the person next to you. Because my guess is they're going to fall in just one of a couple of categories. You're going to name some of the famous authors, right? The Dawkins, Harris, Hitchens, all of those people. Which, again, what is, besides getting into the criticism or what have you of all of those people, what are they known for? They're known for writing books where they're tearing down religion. I mean, that's why they wrote those books, right? That's what they do. Or maybe we talk about stand-up comedians in the sense that they are celebrities. But again, if you're like Ricky Gervais or you're George Carlin, what is your relationship to religion? It's mocking it, pointing out hypocrisy, sure. I mean, I laugh at it. But it is to tear down religion. Government may be the one place where you could have an atheist who's known as an atheist and not afraid to say they're an atheist, but in a position where their job is not to tear down religion. Their job is to make the world better for all of us, theoretically. But like, that would be the thing they're known for. Do you know how big of a sea change that would be for atheists if the most famous atheist people could think of was someone who was just awesome in their job, doing good things, and religion was incidental to their identity? Like, yeah, I'm an atheist, but I don't actually care to get into here's why you're all wrong about something. Not that there's a problem with that. That's what I do. But that would be amazing if people were like, oh yeah, that representative is an atheist and they passed this important legislation that affects all of us and it's good. That would be a huge deal. So this is why I would love to see more atheists in politics. And I want to go to this. This has stuck with me for such a long time. This is a magazine cover for the New Republic. It's from 1996. And the author, Wendy Kaminer, wrote this cover article for the New Republic. And this is the question she was saying. The last taboo, if you can't read it at the bottom, it says, politicians keep saying we should inject more religion into our public life, but what we really need is a healthy dose of atheism. Mind you, this is 96. Bill Clinton's running for a second term. I will take issue with the whole last taboo being atheism in politics, because 96, we hadn't seen Barack Obama. There was no woman as the head of a major party running for president. I mean, there are still plenty of taboos. Atheism is so not the last one. But here's what she wrote in that article that I thought was really interesting, because this still resonates. So atheists generate about as much sympathy as pedophiles. When politicians proclaim their belief in God, regardless of their religion, they're signaling their trustworthiness. By declaring your belief, you imply that an omnipotent, omniscient, and benign force is the source of your values and ideas. And again, this is the stigma we have to overcome. And we've all been there. How many of you have had that moment happen where you finally let somebody know that you're an atheist? And what's their reaction to you? Like, oh, I thought you were a good person, right? Because that's the hard part about being an atheist, trying to get votes from a diverse group of people. You have to overcome that stigma, or you have to hide the fact that you're an atheist, because that's not the battle you want on the campaign trail. So this is kind of what she was getting at. This is why she said atheism was the last taboo, because religion is an easy, vote for me, I'm a good person sort of way to signal that. And this isn't just about symbolism. You may have seen maps like this. The red states, 7 of them, red on this map, these are the 7 states where it still says in their state constitution that you have to believe in a higher power in order to hold public office. You have to. Like, atheists literally, in theory, can't hold office. Now, all of those, the Constitution overrides all of that. None of those laws are enforceable. But it's still in the books in those red states. The green ones are states where atheism is just frowned upon. But here's the thing. So these stigmas have been around for a while. They still have an effect. And, like, they go a long way towards saying, like, you guys there's something wrong with you if you're an atheist. And let me show you how this plays out in actual politics. Let me set the scene for you. It's 2008. Barack Obama is about to be elected, but we don't know that yet. There was a race for Senate in North Carolina. You had the incumbent, who was Elizabeth Dole, the wife of Bob Dole. She had been the senator. She was running for re-election. And in North Carolina, her challenger was a state representative named Kay Hagan. She was the Democrat running for that seat. Now, that got national attention because it doesn't happen very often where you have 2 women running for a Senate seat. That's pretty cool. But here's the thing. Kay Hagan, the Democrat, obviously liberal, she was trying to raise money for her campaign, as one does, and she happened to go to a fundraiser at the home of someone who also happens to be an activist for atheist causes. This was not an atheist fundraiser, but he's rich, so the fundraiser was at his house. And he knew a lot of people in politics, and so she was like, yeah, I'll come to your house for this fundraiser. That's it. There's no story there. But here's how the Elizabeth Dole campaign spun it in a campaign ad. This is totally real. Let's see if this works here. Oh, sorry. Kay Hagan, Elizabeth Dole. Here's the campaign ad.
I'm Elizabeth Dole, and I approved this message.
A leader of the Godless Americans PAC recently held a secret fundraiser in Kay Hagan's honor.
There is no God to rely on. There was no Jesus.
Well, taking under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance, you're down with that.
We're down with that.
In God we trust, you're going to whip that off the money?
Yeah, we would.
Godless Americans and Kay Hagan. She hid from cameras, took godless money. What did Hagan promise in return?
There is no God.
What did she promise in return? I would love to know what we asked for. All of that stuff, none of it has to do with her. The sound bites don't come from her. I'm pretty sure she taught Sunday school. So it's just an absurd ad. Now, the good news, if anything, is that this pretty much backfired because everyone was like, the hell are you doing, Elizabeth Dole's people? And in fact, Kay Hagan ended up winning that race, and it wasn't really even close. You could cheer. This was 2008. She lost to Tom Tillis in 2014. He's up for re-election in 2020. But again, the point is, okay, good, it didn't work. But you see how the atheism came back to haunt her, and she's not even an atheist. They just wanted to use it. As soon as they saw the connection, they're like, that's something we can use. And remember that, because it's going to pop up a lot in the next couple minutes here. So here's the question. That, again, 2008. That was a long time ago. How much of this stuff is still taboo today? And the question is, I think Wendy Kaminer was kind of right to say that it's taboo, because we're going to look at Congress in a second, and it's still hard to find open atheists in Congress, but I do think it changes at a different way. So let me go back for a second. 1996 is when that article came out, the last taboo one. There were 0 open atheists in Congress. But 10 years later, like 2006 and 2008, the election we were just looking at here, the God delusion had come out in like 2006. The end of faith had come out right before then. All that talk about new atheism, this was happening in like 2006, 2007. So if any of you were aware of this movement at the time, it's like, oh, this is getting good. More people are coming out of the closet. It's becoming less of a problem to be an atheist. Maybe that has an effect when it comes to politics too, maybe. I was working at the time with a group called the Secular Coalition for America. It's a lobbying group. It still exists. It's in Washington, D.C. They lobby Congress for real on behalf of church-state separation and issues that matter to a lot of atheists. Now, at the time, we were trying to figure out, like, how many openly non-theistic politicians are there? And more importantly, who's the highest-ranking elected atheist in public life? And if you ask these people, many of whom have been, like, activist atheists for a long time, we weren't coming up with a lot of answers. Like, openly atheist and elected to public office. Is there anybody? And finally, one of the members of our board, David Neosi, this lawyer, said, well, let's just have a contest. And he wasn't joking about this. I'll show you that in a second. Come back here. There we go. He had a contest. He said, let's offer $1,000 to whoever, and all you have to do to win is you have to name the highest-ranking elected official you know, and if we can confirm it with that person, we're not going to out them against their will or take your word for it. If we can confirm it with them, we'll give you the money. And we thought there were 2 ways this could go. Like, worst case scenario, the highest person we could find is like a local dog catcher, which just proves how hard it is to be an atheist in public life, which would be a point worth making, right? On the other hand, maybe Dick Cheney is a secret atheist and none of us knew it. I don't know if that would be a good thing, but there you go. So we were like, all right, maybe somewhere in the middle. And it turned out, we were trying to think about, before we throw the contest out there, who might it be? Who's the highest one we could think of so we can, like, set the bar? And the guy who came to mind was this guy. And if you don't know him, his name is Ernie Chambers. He is a state senator from Nebraska. Nebraska is like the one weird state where they don't have a House and a Senate. They just have one unicameral body. He's been in office for like 40 years. He got term limited out after like 36 years. And then he sat out for 2 years. Then he's like, I'm running again. And then they voted him back in. He's unbeatable. Oh, the guy's amazing. He's also like been a force to repeal the death penalty. And like a couple of years ago, he finally got it done. They overrode the Republican governor's veto, and the death penalty was repealed, but then Republicans were like, we'll put it on the ballot. And then the voters said, no, bring back the death penalty. But he's trying again now. But again, this is the guy who we were like, we're pretty sure this guy's an atheist, because in 1980, he filed a lawsuit saying, we have a state-funded chaplain who delivers an invocation at the beginning of all of our legislative sessions, and they're always religious invocations. We think this is an issue today. It was an issue way back then, too. And he filed a lawsuit over it. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, invocations are fine, go away. And he lost the case. But that case, if you're familiar with any of those church-state separation battles, was called Marsh v. Chambers. That's Chambers. So we were like, well, this guy seems like he's an atheist. But here's the problem. Ernie Chambers is very clear, I don't use the label atheist. You don't get to put a label on me to anybody. And there's a principled approach to that. But he's not open about his atheism. He just kind of says, I am what I am. Don't give me a religious, non-religious label. I don't belong to any of that. So I don't know that he counts. So we were like, all right, if Ernie Chambers doesn't count, then who else is there? By the way, Ernie Chambers literally filed a lawsuit in 2007. He sued God. And he said, this action seeks a permanent injunction ordering the defendant to cease harmful activities and the making of terroristic threats. The case was thrown out of office because they could not issue a summons for God. He's still not an open atheist. He was. He's been at FFRF. He's spoken. He's gotten like a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Humanists Association. But he doesn't use the A word. So there you go. Okay, so Ernie Chambers, he doesn't count in terms of this thing that we're trying to do. So we actually did have this contest. $1,000. Who is it? There's got to be somebody, right? And it turned out a couple people actually said, hey, my congressman is an atheist. I don't know what word he uses, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't believe in God. So we contacted the congressman, and what he said is, I call myself a Unitarian, but I don't believe in a higher power. And we're like, that counts. And so at the time, this guy, Pete Stark, a representative from California, was announced as the highest-ranking non-theistic, that's the word he was comfortable with us using, non-theistic elected official in America. And he wasn't a nobody. I mean, he was a Democrat who was like the chair of the House. I'm sorry, he was on the Ways and Means Committee, decides where all the money goes. He was the chair of the Health Subcommittee. This was not a nobody. So it was a pretty big deal that this guy came out and said he's a non-theist. And one of the things he actually said in the aftermath is he was shocked by how little criticism he got after that story went public. He's like, most people who contacted me about it said, thank you for saying that. They didn't say, oh my God, we're never voting for you again. So that's great. He didn't use the word atheist, but all right, kind of close. So we're at what, 1 in 538? Is that our count right now? Side note, here's what's really messed up. Some of you, if you watch MSNBC, you may have seen this guy, Eric Swalwell. Liberal, he's on the Judiciary Committee, Intelligence Committee. If you are anti-Trump, you love this guy. He's great to watch, and he knows what he's talking about. He is the guy who ran against Pete Stark in a primary in 2012, because you have to win. It's a Democratic area, but the hard part is winning that primary. And when Eric Swalwell tried to defeat Pete Stark in 2012, guess what he used against Pete Stark? Oh yeah. That happened. This is from Eric Swalwell's campaign website. Do we trust Pete Stark to represent our views? And in that very post, here's the setup for what he wrote. I think on the 10-year anniversary of 9/11, they had a House resolution to say, let's just rededicate the motto, "In God We Trust." And it's one of those, it's not a law, but we all feel this way. "In God We Trust" is our motto. The vote for that was 398 to 9. Pete Stark was one of the 9 who said, that shouldn't be our motto, or I'm just not playing this game, or whatever. And this is what Swalwell said. The 15th Congressional District deserves a member of Congress who's in touch with the people, can work well with others, and can honor our national motto. Swalwell won that primary. He's been in Congress since, because he ousted the atheist. For what it's worth, I like Swalwell now, but still, that exists. So, it's 2012. We are back down to 0 open non-theists in Congress. But wait, in 2012, someone else was elected to Congress who we thought was an atheist too. Her name is Kyrsten Sinema. She was elected to Congress from Arizona in 2012. And from all of my contacts, they were all like, no, we're pretty sure she's an atheist. She was a firm supporter of church-state separation issues in Arizona. Privately, maybe she said some of this stuff too. But again, there's a difference between you privately saying it and you being public about it. And after she won the primary in her district and after she got elected to Congress, there were a lot of headlines in a lot of media outlets that said, we now have the first bisexual atheist in Congress. How cool is that? And her campaign is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. She's not an atheist. That was the reaction. And I literally wrote to their campaign. I'm like, no, they didn't say she's not an atheist, but they pushed back against the wording, like, how dare you put a label on her she didn't use or whatever. I asked them, what's her label? Like, does she use any label? And is she an atheist? Just tell me. And here's what they wrote to me. She believes the terms non-theist, atheist, or non-believer are not befitting of her life's work or personal character. You could have said no. Like, why do you have to, like, diss everybody in the process? So she doesn't want to be called an atheist or anything like it. That said, when she was sworn in 2012, John Boehner, and she does the oath, the ceremonial oath, she's taking it on a copy of the U.S. Constitution instead of the Bible. Pretty cool. Last year, she ran for Senate from Arizona against Martha McSally. She won that race, and then Mike Pence had to swear her in. And you could see she's swearing in this time on a stack of law books. So still kind of cool. She's not an atheist. Technically, if you want to know what label she officially uses, it is unaffiliated. Like, I don't want to play this game with all of you. That's her label. So I'm wondering, okay, so there are still like 0 non-theists in office. But there was another guy who came out around this time after he retired from Congress. By the way, here's the list. Pew Research Center comes out with the list every time there's a new inauguration of the religious demographics of Congress. There's us, the unaffiliated. There is one, compared to 23% of the population in America who's unaffiliated with organized religion. There's one member of Congress. That's the Kyrsten Sinema line right there. So I was like, okay, is there anybody else? One guy did come through afterwards. If you're familiar with him, Barney Frank. Very outspoken, very open about being gay, very liberal. He retired a couple years ago. I'm going to play you this clip. This is after he left Congress. He appeared on Bill Maher's show. And see if you could point out when he identifies as an atheist.
You know, you were in a fairly safe district. You were not one of those Congress people who have to worry about every little thing. You could come on this show and sit next to a pot-smoking atheist and it wouldn't bother you.
Which pot-smoking atheist were you talking about here?
Oh, you are liberated. Woo.
No, I regret I had asked my governor to appoint me to a
Yes,
Senate seat.
I
He
wish they
decided
had.
not to. And I was looking forward to having my husband, Jim, hold the Constitution, not the Bible, and affirm, not swear, that I was going to be
Right.
a wonderful senator.
You would have been a wonderful senator. And
It sounds like Barney Frank is an atheist, right? That was the joke, right? That was my take on it. And then, like a year later, Barney Frank came out with a memoir, and in that, he addressed this very clip. And he says, the media reached the conclusion that I had come out as an atheist. In fact, there's no hope for anybody. What he later went on to clarify is that he's Jewish, secular Jew probably, but like he says, he didn't want to drop the Jewish label because he didn't want anyone to perceive that as anti-Semitic. So he wanted to make sure people knew who he identified with the Jewish community. And by the way, he says he's not an atheist, by which I think he means I don't like the label even though I don't believe in God. All right, so we don't get to count Barney Frank in hindsight. But also, okay, so now we're up to like 2016, and Trump is getting elected. And then there was another guy who got sworn in that I could have sworn was an atheist too. This guy won his primary, a very tough primary in Maryland, Jamie Raskin. And this is a headline that started coming out after he won the primary in a pretty blue district. So he was pretty much a shoo-in to win. Congress likely to get its only openly atheist member in November. And they had good reason for saying that. One is everyone who knows the guy is like, yeah, he's totally an atheist. But two, the reason he came to like my radar was in 2006, like a decade before, because he was testifying during a debate on whether they should legalize same-sex marriage in Maryland. So he was not an elected official at the time. He was a professor speaking up. And the thing he said to one of the Republican lawmakers, he said to them, people place their hand on the Bible and swear to uphold the Constitution. They do not place their hand on the Constitution and swear to uphold the Bible. Damn. Yeah. So, right, he's one of us, but after he won the primary and he's like, I got to win this race, what do you think his campaign did? Oh, yeah, like, we're dead. You've got to stop writing these headlines. The man billed as the first atheist bound for Congress isn't actually an atheist at all. He also identifies as Jewish, and he also says, I'm a lowercase h humanist, but I identify as a Jew. Again, fine, but like, come on, you could do both. And he won his race. He's still in Congress, and he's awesome in Congress. But come on, why do you got to run away from it? Okay, so are you with me that like there is a taboo against atheists in Congress here? It seems like it's so hard because all these people, these are not moderates. Raskin is not a moderate. He's a pretty liberal guy. Kirsten Sinema is moderate, but like other people, Barney Frank is no moderate. But if they can't say they're an atheist, like, we got issues. And this also has, like, a self-fulfilling quality to it, because if open atheists can't say they're atheists while in Congress, it kind of becomes a norm that you can't say you're an atheist to get into Congress. The cycle just keeps going like that. It's really frustrating. And so this is a survey from Gallup. They do this every 4 years. This is from 2012, and they say, would you vote for somebody in your political party if that person were a blank? And you would think, like, would you vote for your party president candidate if that person were black? And pretty much everyone's like, yeah. Like, why would that be an issue? Sure. Woman. Yeah, fine. Whatever. And atheist is, like, always at the bottom of this list. This is from 2012. And the surprising thing, this was actually cause for celebration because it was the first time we had topped 50%. Like, yeah, go us. This is 2012. So has it gotten any better? This is the same chart, by the way, just a visualization. There's us in 2012 at the bottom of the list. You could see there was a time, like in 1978, when we weren't last on the list. And just below us at the time was gay and lesbian. I'm glad they jumped up, but that means for the historical nature of this graph, look at how far below we are all the other identities you could theoretically use. So like what? 2012. So like 15, 16 years after Wendy Kaminer said atheism was the last taboo, it kind of still feels like a taboo. So here's the good news. I'm not going to leave you on this like note of depression. It has gotten better, and it's gotten better recently. So since 2016, there's been some changes. This is Jared Huffman. He's also from California. He decided at the nudging of the Secular Coalition for America and the American Humanist Association, he said, I will come out as a humanist. That's the label I will use. I'm a humanist. And that's awesome. Like, he said it. He got a little publicity for it, but like, we got bigger issues in 2016, and you know what I mean? He didn't get a lot of press, but he got some. And he said the same thing Pete Stark said. I did not get a lot of backlash, much at all, for coming out as being openly non-religious. So that's awesome, right? Finally, there is someone in Congress in a safe blue district who is openly non-religious. He doesn't use the word atheist, because they never do, but he says he's non-religious. That's awesome. But like, let me go back to that survey from Pew. This is the one from this came out earlier this year when the new Congress was inaugurated. There's the unaffiliated. There's one, that's the cinema line. Where is Huffman on this list? Because he came out as a humanist before this happened. According to his people, he forgot to fill out the survey. Like, dude, you have one job for me. I don't care what else you do, but really? So according to this list, he's not even on it. I should say, there are like 18 people at the very bottom of this who say, I refuse to answer the question, or I don't know, or I don't want to play the game. So there are 18 people who are like, I'm not answering this survey. But you don't necessarily know what they are. So there's that too. But here's what Huffman has done that is kind of cool. He urged a bunch of his colleagues to start up a Freethought caucus on Capitol Hill. Because they have a congressional prayer caucus, and it's huge. They have a staffer for the caucus. And what does the caucus do? It means you can get together every now and then, discuss matters that are relevant to your common interest. And maybe if you're like the Tea Party caucus, you could say, you know what, we're not going to vote for a certain bill unless they do what we want them to do because they need our votes. That's what a caucus could do. Well, Jared Huffman formed the Congressional Freethought Caucus, and it's not even like just him. If you look at that, I mean, Eleanor Holmes Norton is a delegate. She doesn't get a vote. But the rest of them, you see Jamie Raskin on that list. He did decide to join this up. By the way, 10 members of this Congressional Freethought Caucus, not a single one is openly atheist. Unless you want to count Jared Huffman, who doesn't use the word. There's like a Buddhist on the list. Pramila Jayapal is Hindu. But they're all, what does this caucus do? They don't say, yay, atheism. What they say is, we're fighting for reason-based legislation. We're fighting for church-state separation, science education. That's the focus of their caucus. And that's awesome. I would like to think this is going to grow larger, but this is current. At the moment, there are 10 members of it. Here's another thing that happened since then. In 2016, they took that poll again, the Gallup poll about who would you vote for president in your party. And check this out. Here's us at the bottom. Wait, no, that's not us on the bottom. We're over here. Thanks, Bernie Sanders. Right? Socialist is at the bottom of the list. Yeah. And we're at 58%, so we're slowly moving up in the rankings. But we're not like the dead last on the list. So that, why is this happening, by the way? Why are we becoming less of a problem for people? I could give a whole nother talk on this. I would attribute it to a whole bunch of things. I would say, why are people less afraid of voting for an atheist? Because you see what happens when like the religious right gets involved in politics. You could chalk it up to, you know, all the books, blogs, podcasts, the new atheism type of stuff, a growing internet presence where people don't feel alone if you are an atheist anymore. And I would also say it kind of makes a difference when the biggest religious denominations in the country are all going through sexual abuse scandals as we speak. It's like, all right, you know what? I don't really want to be a part of organized religion anymore, and being atheist doesn't really seem like as big of a deal. So there's a lot of reasons this might be happening. And in 2018, at the last midterm election, I started doing something that I really should have done a long time ago. But I started to keep track of all of these people in Congress and at the state level who were open about their non-religiosity. And like we know in Congress, other than Huffman, who was running for re-election, and by the way, he did get re-elected even though he had been out as a humanist, so yay, it didn't affect him. But the question is, okay, what about at the state level? How many, because a lot of people run for office, for state rep or state senator, and they have a lot less pressure to like be whatever it is they are. Like if you say you are a blank, for the most part, people don't really care because it's not like they have a ton of money to use against you anyway. So it's like, okay, we're going to find atheists in office. We got to look at the state level. And I started keeping this spreadsheet. Sorry if you're colorblind. I will change the colors, I swear. But I started keeping track of all these people and who was open about their atheism or their non-theism after they won the primary, and how did these people do? And of course, if you're keeping track of any state results, a whole bunch of people are going to lose, because usually we're talking about challengers, and usually challengers lose a race. But the weird thing is a whole bunch of people, and I know you can't read this, that's okay. Does this go down? Yeah, sure. As we're scrolling down this list, the green means they won their election in their state. I know there's a lot of red, but look at the green. And these people, all of them on this list, identified under some non-religious label, whether it was atheist, agnostic, spiritual, but not religious, whatever they wanted to call themselves, it got to the point where the number of winners has exceeded 50. There are more than 50 openly non-theistic candidates serving in state legislatures across the country. That is huge. And we don't talk about it, but like all these people existed for a while. A lot of them are incumbents. Like they've been in office for a while, but it just never was a thing to them to come out as an atheist. And a bunch of them were challengers too. This spreadsheet happened because a branch of the American Humanist Association called the Freethought Equality Fund formed a PAC where they're like, we will offer endorsements from our organization if you are non-religious in whatever label you want to use and you support the following like values of the AHA, we may offer you our endorsement. And part of getting that endorsement, and again, if you're running for a state office that no one is paying attention to, you're looking for any attention you can get. So people were like, yeah, sure, I'll take your endorsement. What do I have to do? Just say I'm like non-theistic? Yeah, I'm fine with that. And they did. So their work helps a lot here. And the thing is, like, how many of these? Check out this. They started doing these endorsements in 2014. They had 18 endorsements. 7 people got elected in 2014. And I think most of them, if not all of them, were incumbents. Like, you didn't really help there. 2016, they endorsed 61 candidates, 44 won. And this isn't just statewide. This is also city council races and other lower races. Check out 2018. 291 endorsements, 68 of whom actually got elected, and most of those are state-level legislators. That is amazing. I have had a legislator tell me, I had one privately DM me on Twitter saying, why am I not on your list? This spreadsheet. I'm like, because I don't know who the hell you are, that's why. I'm like, you weren't on the list of endorsements from the PAC. Like, did you get a letter from them? She said no, even though they did confirm they sent one to her. Whatever, mail got lost or something. But she said, I'm totally an atheist. I'm like, are you okay with me saying this publicly? She's like, look at my Twitter feed. I say fuck every other tweet. I'm fine with you saying I'm an atheist. Done. Fine. Earlier this year, I saw a piece of legislation from a state where I'm like, oh, it's like pro-science education. That's an awesome bill. I hope they pass it. And it was, the sponsor of that bill was someone who was on this list of the non-religious candidates. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. This is what happens when you put like a non-theist in office. They sponsor these really good bills. Then I look at the list of co-sponsors. It was like 6 other members of that list. Like, it's like she got everyone in her state who was openly non-theistic to co-sponsor the bill, and I mentioned that on my website, and she reached out to me, and she said, how do you think I found the co-sponsors? I saw the list, and she's like, they'll be on my side. So she reached out to them specifically, will you co-sponsor my bill? They all said yes. But like, that's the power of knowing, like, oh, these people are like-minded. I can reach out to them. So, okay, I'm gonna stop there. There's so much more I could say, but what can we take away from all of this? Here's a few takeaways, and I realize I'm skipping over a whole bunch of stuff here. Maybe we'll talk about it in the Q&A or something. The first is, how do you win if you are a non-religious candidate? Like, did we learn anything from all of these people? What did they do that atheism wasn't a black mark on their candidacy? And here's the one big one. Don't let atheism define you. Because for most of the people who are in office, they do all these other things. Atheist activism is usually not the thing they are known for. But even though they are out as an atheist, it doesn't dominate the conversation. And here's a perfect example of what I mean. This woman's name is Megan Hunt. She ran for state senate, or the Senate, in Nebraska. This is the Ernie Chambers unicameral place where everyone's a senator. She ran for that seat. And I was looking at this, and I'm like, oh, good, she's a progressive candidate. She's the type of person I would vote for if I live in Nebraska. And of course, when you're running in Nebraska for the Senate, it's a local race. No one outside of it usually cares. But local papers will do like, here's the bio of the candidates, right? And I look at her local paper, and in the sidebar, there's just this: what's your faith? Atheist. And I'm like, you just said it. You're not supposed to say it, but you just did, like it was nothing, and no one cared. It was the most amazing thing. It's like, you didn't even hide it. You just kind of put it out there, and then everyone's like, yeah, all right, whatever. Like, it's amazing. And I asked her later, like, by the way, she won this race. And I've asked her, like, did you ever get any backlash for this? And she said no. And she said one of the reasons, I want to quote her directly. I said, has anyone asked you about the atheism? And she said yes. At town hall meetings, during the campaign, yeah, people brought it up. But her response was always, take the air out of the balloon, don't center the issues. Don't center the issue. What she means by that is if they said, are you an atheist? Yeah, I'm not personally religious, but here's why I'm fighting for all of you. Right? Pivot. That's like campaigning 101. She knows how to do it, but she never let that become the thing she was known for. It's just one of the things that defines her. So that's one way she didn't let it become an issue. And she also added that she wouldn't hide it. She would give the exact same advice to religious candidates who were running for office, like, you're not running to be this religious person in office. You are running to be their representative. So tell them why you'd be a good representative, and who the hell cares what your label is? Fair point. So that's one thing. That's how you get it done. And she's one of the few people who openly said she's an atheist. So good for her. The other thing is, and I know August mentioned this in his talk, the demographics do favor us, because America is becoming a less religious place. And check out this, that Gallup poll in 2016 where socialist is at the bottom and stuff. Look at what happens when you break these labels down by age. Here's the atheist line. Yeah, at the far right, if you're 65 or older, only 48% of people say, I would vote for you, even if you were in my party, if you're an atheist. But look at the far left. If you're 18 to 29 years old, 75% of them are fine with voting for an atheist. It's not a deal breaker if you're a millennial, right? And honestly, even socialists, they're like, yeah, whatever, AOC is fine, we'll vote for a socialist, whatever you want to call yourself. You just see a lot less prejudice against the labels if you're younger. So that is also working in our favor. Here's another one, and there's a bunch of you here who are at UW-Madison, so this is specifically to you. Like, you should run for anything. Like, the only races I've been talking about here are Congress and state-level legislatures, right? This is a joke we talked about there's a book that came out about getting people into elected office. And the thing is, there are like 400,000 elected seats in America. And all of us, even if you're politically conscious, you only care about like 1,000 of them. Like all of Congress, a handful of state-level positions, and then none of the other ones. They're like Kardashian babies. There's a ton, and only like a handful get any attention, right? So there's all these seats out there. Run for one of them. Think about city council races. Who's on your city council? Can you name all the members? Maybe a couple of you. Not everybody. Who's on your school board? Do you know all their names? Because all of those races directly impact your community. And if you have any internet savviness, if you know anything about politics, you're already head and shoulders above damn near every candidate. Because you know how to get people to care about these issues. And if you're passionate and you're looking for an outlet to be like a progressive person, run for one of those seats. Because it's possible to do it even while you have a career elsewhere for most of these seats, right? So I would add there are groups now that are really, this is specifically going to people who are progressive. There's a group that wants to help you run for something. It's called Run for Something. And they basically say, look, if you match our progressive values, we will walk you through everything you need to do to run a campaign. Like, we won't give you necessarily money, and we can't promise you that you're going to win. But one of the obstacles to running for office is like, okay, I want to run for city council. What do I do? What do I need to fill out a form somewhere? Like, most people have no idea. And they're like, we will guide you through it if you're saying, I'm a progressive who wants to run for office. So those groups exist. I'm also going to give a plug for, I have nothing to do with this group, but I just like it. This is a one-woman show called Get Her Elected. And all she does is, leading up to a election, I get an email from this woman like once a week that says, here are progressive women running for various candidacy offices, from state legislature down to school board, and they need your help to do the following. I need someone to man my Facebook page, or I need someone to help me know how to say the right things when I give like a stump speech. I coach public speaking at a high school, so I'm like, oh, you need help with public speaking? I'll totally watch your video and then offer critiques. And they're not campaign positions, but it's like volunteer help. It's like, cool, there are ways to get help if you need it, if you fit certain identities. So cool. And here's the last one. Ask questions. Not just generically. Like, you guys are presumably, most of you are all from Wisconsin, which means candidates care about you. I'm from Illinois. No one talks to us during presidential races. But in Wisconsin, you know they're going to pay attention to you in 2020, which means like every Democratic candidate is going to make their way through the entire Midwest or certain states while they want your votes. And certainly they want your votes in the primaries. And here's what I mean by ask questions, because you could do this when the GOP has candidates running in their primaries too. When they come to a town hall in your area, or when they come to do some big event and you get a chance to ask questions, ask them about science education, sex education, church-state separation, what their positions are on any faith-based sort of issue or where religion has posed a problem, and get them on video answering it. And here's the reason why that's important. During any of the Democratic debates that are going to be coming up, during the presidential debates that are coming up, those issues never come up, right? And it's so important. There's a guy in Iowa who's a wonderful activist named Justin Scott. So again, Iowa, every candidate and their family is making their way through his town multiple times a week. And he goes to all of these. So during 2016, when he had all the Republicans running through his state, he would go to every meeting and with a camera, and he's like, Ted Cruz, I have a question for you about church-state separation. We all know where Ted Cruz stands on church-state separation. But to get him on camera saying, like, hey, this was actually his question, I believe, Justin's question. Ted Cruz, I am an atheist. I represent this group. We don't believe in God, but we are good people. We are good citizens, something like that. Why should any atheist vote for you? What are you going to do for us? And that's a good question to ask someone like him, because I would love to know what Ted Cruz would answer to that, right? But again, this matters for Democrats too. I want to know where they stand on these issues and how they talk about. It's been fascinating to see how some of them talk about religion while they're campaigning. So all of you, if you are going to those town halls, ask them questions. Get it on video. Send me the video. Whatever you want to do. And to be clear, like, I know Democrats don't usually reach out to atheists as a voting bloc, but this is one way to let them know, hey, we exist, we vote, we care about these particular issues, so I want to know what you say about it. And that is something that's going to matter, especially as we get up on the next election. I know my time is up. Let me add one thing. Maybe we can discuss in a Q&A. I would say all 50 plus of those elected officials who were elected as open atheists, every one of them is a Democrat. Are there Republicans out there who are non-religious? In theory, maybe. There actually was one I identified who was an out atheist, used the word atheist. He was an elected Republican, but then he changed parties and then he lost his re-election bid. So there are currently, as far as I can tell, 0 open atheist Republicans at the state level or higher, in case you're wondering. Okay, I will stop there. If there's any time for questions, we can. If not, you can find me in the next 10, 15 minutes. Thank you, guys. Contact information if you have questions later.